All right. Good morning, everybody. We are so glad that you have decided to spend some time with us, as always. And if this is your first time with us, we would love for you to fill out just a quick information thing for us so that we will have information so that you can stay um, in touch with us. We can stay in touch with you and let you know everything that's going on. We set up this link a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, maybe 2 months now. I've lost all track of time. But some of you who are here with us every week still haven't filled that out. And so if you would just take a minute, the link is in the chat. So if you would just click on that at some point today and just let us have your information, that way we'll make sure that all of everything that we have is up to date so we can know about you and your family, the kids that live with you, and all of that. So please take a minute to do that. That would help us a ton. I want to let you know about a couple of things this morning before we get going. One is we have new Connection Valley shirts, long sleeve t-shirts. I'm wearing one this morning. Brian is wearing one this morning. I see Charles is wearing one this morning. Becca is wearing hers this morning. So we are really excited about these shirts. They're super comfortable, and they will be $15. So we have an event this Saturday on Halloween, October 31st, from 5 to 6. We're hosting a trunk or treat. It'll be in the parking lot that's between Cakes by Bee and Potent Potables in Jamestown. They're on Main Street, and so we will be there, and Brian will have the shirts with him. So if you are interested in getting a shirt for yourself, like I said, they're $15 a piece. That'll be another reason to come to this trunk or treat event. And we still would actually love to have a few more cars filled up with candy, just to love the kids in our community. We hope to make this a really fun event. This is something that has been an opportunity that was presented to us, and we are super, super excited about that. So if you haven't made plans to be part of this event, on Saturday, we would love to have you out there. Even if you can't fill up your car with candy, if you want to swing by and just have some connection time, that would be great. So it's from 5 to 6 in that parking lot between Cakes by Bee and Potent Potables on Main Street in Jamestown. And we are really, really excited about that event. One more thing that we want to let you know about coming up, we're calling it our Confection Connection, and that's going to be on November 14th. And this is an event for families with kids from preschool, really birth, all the way through high school. We're hoping that our older students will want to be some hands to help the younger students, but Cakes by Bee has offered to let us use their bakery. We're going to make some cookies and decorate them, and then take those to people in the community, firefighters, neighbors, anybody that could use a cheer up. So we are really, really excited about that. So save the date. We'll be sending out some more information about that in our Family Ministries newsletter that comes out each week on Thursdays. So, but we wanted you to go ahead and save that date because we know that sometimes Saturdays can get filled up quickly. So we would love for all of you to be a part of those things. Our mission at Connection Valley Church is to influence people to life-giving connections with Jesus, their family, and their community. And so that's why we do the things that we're doing. Everything that we're doing is about trying to make those life-giving connections. And so that's why we're here this morning. And hopefully that's what happens in this time as we worship together, hear a word from Brian, and then also participate in small groups. So Jim, if you would go ahead and kick us off.
Yeah. Just one word, you calm the storm that surrounds me. Just one word, the darkness has you retreat. Just one touch, I feel the presence of heaven. Just one touch, my eyes are open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that our God can do. It's not a mountain that He can't move.
Thank you, Jim. There's one question that can take a conversation I have with somebody from normal to either awesome, awkward, or weird that I get asked all the time, and you probably do too. And the question is this: what do you do for a living? And depending on what you've said to me or what your background is, your response to my answer could be all over the field. And so I talk to people all the time. I talked to a guy yesterday, and he happened to be just a neighbor walking down the street. And we've gotten to know each other a little bit recently, just in conversation at the edge of our driveway and the road. And it ended up being an awesome conversation because he ended up sharing with me how God delivered him from cancer. But a lot of the times, I don't have those kind of conversations. A lot of times, people actually apologize to me. And they apologize to me because of what they've said prior to knowing that I'm a pastor. And it's kind of awkward because maybe they've said some words that begin with a letter F or S or D, and you probably know these words. And then they find out I'm a pastor and they're like, oh crap. And they will apologize to me. And that instantly creates an awkward situation. So I just tell them, look, you don't need to apologize to me. You need to apologize to God because Jesus died for that. And no, I don't say that, I promise. But I think like how to respond to scenarios to make them super awkward, even more awkward than they already are. And I normally don't do them. Occasionally I do, to the chagrin of the people in my life that love me the most. But why would someone apologize to me? And I think it's a variety of reasons, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But I think a lot of times people, when they find out I'm a pastor and it gets awkward, there are a couple of reasons why. Number one, I think it's the cultural portrayal of Christians. Any Office fans out there? Just raise your hand. Yeah. So Angela Martin, right? Angela, she is the only Christian on the show, or person who identifies as a Christian on the show. Yet she is the most judgmental, most hypocritical, biggest jerk. She tries to come off as pious, and she talks about being a Christian, and yet she's sexually promiscuous. She's constantly talking about other people in a negative way, and she's everything that we would not want to be in our lives. And I find that not to be true just for The Office. I find it to be true for movies when Christians are portrayed like that, and that's just the common thing. Is our culture portrays Christians as being judgmental, hypocritical jerks. And then the other factor, I think, is people's past experience with church, because all of us have an experience with church, or at least most of us do. As our culture is becoming less church, I'm finding that there are people who actually haven't gone or been part of a church. But even for most of us, that's a rare thing, that most people have some kind of experience. And a lot of those experiences, unfortunately, are negative. And a lot of that negativity is tied to the fact that churches have a tendency over time to go from being outward focused to inward focused. And if you don't know their rules, if you don't know their ways, then you're an outsider. And so rejection often happens, or people are part of a church for a while and they have legitimate church hurt from church leadership or other people. And that may be some of you right now. That may be some of the reason why you're with us today as Connection Valley Churches, is maybe you see something different. I mean, we definitely want to be different. We want to be known for not what we're against, but what we're for. And I think churches quite often are known for what they're against rather than what they're for. And so I think one of the main reasons why people would apologize to me when they find out that I'm a pastor, maybe they've said things that are unflattering, or they've dropped a couple cuss words, or whatever the case may be, is they want to be accepted. Now, whether they agree with me or not, they want to be accepted, because we all want to be accepted. We are acceptance magnets. We are drawn to people who accept us. And so that's wired inside of us to want to be accepted by people, by God, by others. And so even though I'm a pastor and they may not even agree with what I believe or what I say, they apologize because they want to be right with me. They want me to accept them. They don't want me to judge them. And I started thinking, well, that's really interesting. If we're all acceptance magnets, and we we want to be liked. I mean, that's the bottom line. And so oftentimes the church has done a very poor job in showing people acceptance and meeting people where they are. And one of the things we want to do is we want to meet people where they are, but then call them to something better. That we believe that life with Jesus can be better. We can love better. And then we, in our family, we can actually be better. And with our community, we can actually do better. And we can tear down the walls that exist, whether they're walls of how people view God, or what they've experienced in the past, or whatever they've come to believe based on how culture has portrayed Christians and the church. We can help bring those walls down. Then we definitely want to do it. And so how do we go about bringing those walls down? How do we take steps toward breaking down walls between the church and the community? And for those of you who are part of the church, who identify as a Christian, this is directly targeted for you. If you're not a Christian yet, if you're not a follower of Jesus, I would say this may be a message that would make you want to be a follower of Jesus, because I'm hoping that in seeing Jesus for who he truly is, it would make you want to be part of a church like that breaks down walls between us and the community. And when we see Jesus for who he is, as we talked about in week 1 of this series, it changes everything. And in John chapter 8, there's a guy named John who wrote the book of John, which I just think is easy to remember. And John was one of Jesus's friends and followers. And Jesus wrote this book about the life of Jesus. And in John chapter 8, we see an interchange between Jesus and the religious leaders of that time. And they were known as the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were the most powerful religious group of that time in the first century. And they had an oppressive hold on the way things were. They controlled people. They exploited people. They were about their own external, the way they looked, the way they were perceived. They were about the externals, not the internal. And so Jesus came to do something way different. He came to flip their system on its head and to take away their ability to have that kind of power over people. He came to do something brand new in you and in me. And so in John chapter 8, one of the things I love about this story is Jesus goes right to the heart of where the system of the religious people of that time were exploiting people the most, and that was at the temple. And so Jesus is at the temple and he's teaching, and people are gathering around, a large crowd are gathering around Jesus, and they're taking in what he's saying. And the Pharisees, they don't like it. They're like, this dude is messing with our power. He's messing with our control. He's messing with our system. We need to get rid of him. And they were actually talking about killing him. It's a pretty barbaric culture. And so Jesus teaches one day, and then he goes home to the Mount of Olives or to the Mount of Olives to hang out, and probably with his disciples. And then he comes back the next morning. He takes a morning walk, which is about a 30-minute walk probably, from the Mount of Olives back to the temple the next morning. And we pick this up in John chapter 8, verses 1 and 2. Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning, he was back again at the temple. A crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. And so here he is, and by the temple, which was the place where this religious system of exploitation was being exercised the most. And Jesus goes and he starts teaching a message that's countercultural to what this group, the Pharisees, the message they were teaching. And so the Pharisees start gathering around, and teachers of the law and scribes, which were basically people who interpreted the law, the religious law, and they want to lay a trap for Jesus. They want to have a gotcha moment. And so in verse 3, as Jesus was speaking, the teachers of the religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. Now, that word caught is interesting. I think it implies that they were looking for someone to fail. They were looking for someone to do wrong because they wanted to set a trap for Jesus. And so they dragged this woman out in front of the crowd. Now let's stop and think about this for a moment. Could you imagine that scene? Can you imagine being there by the temple, and Jesus had been teaching people, and it was, wow, this teaching is amazing. And then the Pharisees come in and they're listening to what he's saying. And then some of them go away and they find this woman, and they drag her right out of the moment that she's having adultery, and they bring her to this crowd and they throw her in the middle, like throwing her into the ring. She may have a sheet wrapped around her. I don't know exactly what that was like, but the possibility is very real. And in this moment, they're looking to exploit her. They're looking to try to trap Jesus. And can you imagine what she might have felt? The humiliation, the fear. I can't even imagine the shame that maybe she felt in that moment. Every eye is on her, and they're at Jesus, they're at her, and the Pharisees are like, we got him now. So in verses 4-6, teacher, they say to Jesus, this woman was caught, so we have that word again, caught, in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? They were trying to trap Jesus into saying something they could use against him. And so I can see them there with their rocks, and these weren't little rocks. The way they stoned people at that time is they had big rocks, and they would smash people's bodies with the rocks. And you probably could hear the bones crunch as the rocks were thrown down on somebody that they decided to stone. And while this wouldn't happen quite this way in our modern culture, gosh, we certainly experience the religious attitude of the Pharisees today, and see that so often in our churches of being known for what they're against rather than what they're for. And so they're in this scene, and she's in the middle of essentially this pit, and she's anticipating that her life is probably going to end. And Jesus, in this moment, he does something that is really unexpected. He stoops down and he writes in the dust with his finger. He gets down on her level. I envision that he was right beside her in that moment. And there's something communicated in his body posture. He's not setting himself up above her, but he goes low right there with her, meeting her where she was. And I imagine that there's murmuring in the crowd, like, what is he doing? Why isn't he responding to us? Give us an answer, Jesus. We caught her. You've got to condemn her in this moment. She's trash. Why don't you just go ahead and jump in with our system, our way of doing things? You just be on our team, and we can keep doing this together. And how did Jesus respond? Well, he didn't play their game. And I can imagine that they were getting more and more frustrated as he was down on the ground with her. They kept demanding an answer, it says in verse 7. So he stood up. So he comes from this position of meeting her where she is, and he stands up. And I imagine there's something also with this body position of standing up and saying, this is not how it's going to be. We're doing something brand new. This woman isn't trash. He says, all right, let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. And I imagine it got real quiet until you hear the dropping of the rocks. And he stoops down and he begins writing in the dust. And it's so interesting because they try to come at Jesus with this, I caught you, I caught her, you're caught in the trap, she's caught. And he hits him with a gotcha boomerang. I love it. Let he who's never sinned throw the first stone. Go ahead, do it. But only if you're perfect, only if you've obeyed the law of Moses perfectly, because obeying the law of Moses perfectly wasn't possible. It's one of the things that makes Jesus so refreshing. And it says in verse 9, John writes, when the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest. The gotcha boomerang came back, and it just took them away from the scene, oldest to youngest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman back on the ground with her. Not saying, I'm looking down on you, you're a piece of trash, how could you? But right there, with her. And I believe he says this to her. Okay. He stands up. I believe he probably lifted her up. Now, it doesn't specifically say that, but I believe he is bringing her up and restoring her to who God made her to be. And he says this: where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. And Jesus said, neither do I. That's powerful, y'all. Neither do I. The one who was perfect, the one who could condemn, didn't. And then he calls her to something better. Go and sin no more. He calls her to something better. He gives her a vision for a preferred future. You don't have to keep living this way. You don't have to keep having adulterous relationships. You're better than that. I made you for more than that. But I don't condemn you. I'm bringing you into a new future. And I love it because in this moment, he offers her forgiveness of sin, and he encourages her to turn a new way, to repent, to go a different direction, to change her mind, because Jesus was a perfect embodiment of grace and truth. Grace and truth. And when you walk in grace and truth, it creates a tension, because there are people who are all grace and they're all about, oh, well, we're not going to say anything or challenge anybody. And there are people who are all truth. They're all, you're wrong, you're bad, you're terrible, you're trash. And Jesus was the imperfect embodiment of saying, I love you where you are, and now I'm going to call you to something better. And that is powerful. And to me, if you're not a follower of Jesus, it's one of the most compelling reasons why you would want to follow him. Not these flawed, messed up church systems. We as a church are made up of people. We're going to be flawed, but because of Jesus's grace and truth, if we live that way as being for people, what could happen in us and in our community and every person we run into? I want to just go through really quickly the differences between the approach of the Pharisees and their condemnation approach and the approach of Jesus' grace and truth. First, the Pharisees saw the woman's poor choices. Jesus saw her potential. The Pharisees saw her as used up trash. Jesus saw her as his treasured child. The Pharisees canceled the woman. Jesus had compassion on her. The Pharisees were about elevating themselves to a high position over the woman. And Jesus met her right where she was and pointed her to a better way. The Pharisees were about looking good. Jesus was about actually being good. The Pharisees were about fault finding. Jesus was about being a friend. The Pharisees were about condemnation. Jesus was about change. The Pharisees were about judgment. Jesus was about forgiveness. The Pharisees were about the rejection of sinners. Jesus was about the acceptance of sinners. The Pharisees' approach was life-taking. Jesus' approach was life-giving. And this is probably one of my favorite things about this. Because of Jesus' new way, this woman had a chance. She had a chance, y'all. She wasn't done. God was not done with her. Her pain no longer, her past and her pain no longer defined her. She now had a present and a future because of Jesus. That is powerful. And again, if you're not a follower of Jesus, today would be a great day to put your trust in him, because he looks at you the same way. I accept you where you are, but I love you too much to leave you there. And I'm going to call you into a better future, meeting you right where you are. Man, what would happen if we got caught up in not catching people doing wrong, but got caught up in living a bigger story? What would happen? What would happen if we began to do one of these 7 things that I came up with? I like 7, I like the number 7. So I got 7 things. What if we begin to saw potential in people? What if we decided, we're not just going to see them where they are, but where they could go? Or what if we begin to saw people as treasure, as made in the image of God? What could change in our world if we begin to see people as treasure, made in the image of God, not who they vote for or what they believe? Be powerful. What if we said, you know what? We're going to be compassionate. If someone comes to us where we work or at school or even our home and they're having a bad day, there's probably a reason why. What if we said, you know what? We're going to be compassionate. We're going to have an attitude of compassion. Or what if we did this? What if we said, you know what? We're going to show someone a better way. When they're struggling, when they're down, when they feel like they're a failure, we show them a better way. We give them a vision of a preferred future. Maybe it's sharing them what Jesus has done in your life and what he brought you from. Or what if we just said, you know what, we're going to do good. We're just going to do good. I was talking with a friend this past week in the context of my men's small group. He actually shared this in the small group. And he said, remember that thing we used to do called pay it forward? I was like, yeah. He said, you know, like someone's in the drive-through line behind you at Chick-fil-A and you buy their meal, or you're at Starbucks and you buy the person's coffee behind you. What if we start doing that again? I was like, that's a great idea. That's within our power. Most of us can spare $5 on behalf of someone else. Well, Chick-fil-A may be more than that, but we can do something for somebody to say you have value. We can do good. Number 6, maybe we can be a friend. Just be a friend. One of the best things we can do, one of the greatest gifts we can give is our ears to somebody. Yesterday, when my neighbor came by and we were talking at the end of my driveway, I had a lot to do. And when he started going into his story of having cancer and all the different treatment options he considered, and y'all, there were a lot of them. For a second, I was like, oh no, how long is this going to be? And then I started thinking about this, and this is where God sometimes loves us. He gets us, but he loves us. I started thinking about my dad, and today is a 6-year anniversary of his death, and he died of cancer. And this guy's probably around what my dad's age would be. And I thought, man, what I wouldn't give to be able to hear my dad talk today. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to stay here as long as he needs me. And that other stuff, it'll happen when it needs to happen. And then the last thing, be life-giving with your words. Now, is there overlap in some of these 7 things? Yes. Yes, there is. But you know what? Maybe today, one of those things stands out to you the most. I want to challenge you to put that in action, because when you do, you will basically be living out our vision, inspiring people to make better connections and live better stories, or bigger stories, to make better connections and live bigger stories. We want to inspire people to do that, because we know when the connections are good with Jesus, when connections are good in our family, when connections are good with our community, that the story being lived out is so much bigger than we could write on our own. So what is it for you? I know for me, when I was a kid, I grew up in a church, and it was very much about don't. And I remember feeling judgment. I remember feeling condemnation, and I remember feeling that God was that way. And so I'm not saying this is the only reason I rebelled and pushed God away, but I decided to live my own way for a long time. And it wasn't until I was 22 years old and in college that I got to the end of myself, and that self-centered way of living was not bringing about the life that I wanted. And I said, you know what? I don't live this way anymore, and I don't know what to do. My brother invited me to a Bible study where they talked about God's love for me, and I began to see God in a brand new way. And he changed me from the inside out. He gave me a brand new direction, a brand new passion, a brand new purpose. And a better connection was made with Jesus. A better connection began to happen with my family. A better connection happened with my community. And my story is so much bigger than it used to be. And I want that for other people. I want that for you. I want that for people we don't know yet. Because when we make better connections, we live bigger stories. And so what are the barriers that need to be broken down between you and your community? At work, at school, in your neighborhood, wherever you go. Where do you need to make a better connection so that you live a bigger story and the people around you do? Because see, we don't grow until we go. Growing and going go together. And Jesus went. He took that walk that day from the Mount of Olives to the temple, to the heart of the religious system, and was able to give a woman and all these people who were watching a brand new vision of what could be by making a better connection and helping to point her to a bigger story. So let me pray for us. God, there is nothing that you can't do. I thank you so much for the truth of that statement. I thank you so much for the truth of what Jesus did for us. And I thank you for the grace that's all wrapped up in that truth. And I pray, God, that you would help us to be very mindful of where you want us to make a better connection in order to inspire and live bigger stories. I thank you for the men, women, teenagers on this in this service today. And God, I look forward to what you will bring from it and what you will break down between us and our community. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Speak to me, but the silence steals my voice. You understand me. You understand me. Come to me in the valley of unknowns. You understand me. You understand me. You understand me, God. You understand me. So I throw all my cares before you. My doubts and fears don't scare you. You're bigger than I thought you were. You're bigger than I thought. And I stop all negotiations with the God of all creation. You're bigger than I thought you were. So bigger than I thought you were. I believe, but help my unbelief. You understand me. You understand me. Help me reach the faith that's underneath. You understand me. You understand me. Yes, you understand me, God. You understand me. I throw all my cares before you. My doubts and fears don't scare you. You're bigger than I thought you were. So bigger than I thought. I stop all negotiations with the God of all creation. You're bigger
Thank you so much, Jim. As always, fantastic job. Hey, I want to tell you guys, we got a letter this past week from the Winston-Salem Rescue Mission. And because of your generosity, we've been able to partner with them this month. And every time we have someone here for the first time, a lot of you already know that we give $10 to a local charity that or mission that we partner with. And so they're our focus for the month of October. And there was a letter that I wanted to share with you because, well, it was written to all of us. So Connection Valley Church, thank you so much for your gift. Your gift is already giving nourishing food, safe shelter, and necessities to those we serve here at the mission. But more than just meeting their basic needs, your support provides an opportunity for them to experience God's abundant love firsthand. Around Thanksgiving, feelings of loneliness and despair can intensify for those who are struggling with poverty or addiction. Your support can give someone the courage and support they need to take those first steps toward a new life. This Thanksgiving, please remember all the lives you have touched, people you have blessed, and gratitude that will be expressed thanks to your incredible kindness. Gratefully, Lou Carrico. He's the interim executive director. So I just want to say great job for inviting, great job for being generous financially, because if you've given, you are part of what's happening at the Winston-Salem Rescue Mission, helping to rescue men from addiction and being pointed into a bigger story because of the better connections being made. So awesome job. Also want to let you know that we are beginning a new series next week called Refreshed. We all need to be refreshed, especially in this season of political turmoil. And so we're not going to be focused on politics. So some of you would love that, because if you see another political ad, you're going to punch someone in the throat probably. And not that I've thought that by any means, but we're going to talk about how to be refreshed instead of being stressed. And so we're going to be talking about different ways to be refreshed in November as we go into the holidays and all the stuff that comes with that. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand it over to beautiful Brooke, and I'm going to let her go and take it from here.
All right, so I am going to open up our breakout rooms for small group. And like we say all of the time, if you have not participated in these small groups, you're missing out. So we would love to invite you to participate for just a few more minutes with us today. Most of those small group leaders will give you a break so that you can go to the bathroom and grab some more coffee, and we can just interact a little bit around the ideas that were presented this morning. Again, thank you so much for being with us. And we look forward to seeing you in small groups and then again next week.